It's been 4 months since the release of Wave 1 of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pack. Since then, we have gotten no new information about a second wave coming anytime soon. Never mind, Nintendo just waited until I wrote and finished a script about how they aren't announcing them, so shoutouts to them. Honestly, it's getting a bit absurd, and I really wanted to make a Mario Kart video, but luckily for me, there just so happens to be 48 other tracks already in the base game to talk about. A few years ago, I made a video ranking every single cup in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which I do of course plan on remaking once all the new tracks have been released. In that video, I said my personal favorite cup was the Star Cup, which features the courses Sunshine Airport, Dolphin Shoals, Electrodrome, and Mount Wario. Welcome to another episode of Level by Level. Today I want to take a look at these tracks and figure out what exactly they do to make them some of my favorites in not only Mario Kart 8, but also the entire series. We'll be covering everything from their aesthetic, layout, shortcuts, and more. So if you enjoy this video and want me to analyze more tracks in the Mario Kart series outside of the upcoming DLC, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. But with that said, let's take a look at our first course, Sunshine Airport. As the name implies, Sunshine Airport is an airport based loosely on Super Mario Sunshine. Elements like shine sprites can be seen all over the track along with the Piantas. There are even posters all around the track referencing some other locations, such as this one referencing the Dry Desert track. I really like this touch. It makes the world of the game feel a bit more connected, and these being in an airport all makes a lot of sense. You can even see the names of different tracks appearing on the screen, showing that they are indeed locations that these planes are traveling to. Outside of just references to other things though, this just looks great in general. I mean, I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best looking game Nintendo ever made. You don't count! But yeah, of course looking good in this game isn't going to be much of a surprise. Along with that, the music is unsurprisingly great. I do think Odyssey is the best soundtrack in the Mario series, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a close second. While this theme is certainly not my favorite in the game, that is far from meaning it's bad. I don't think a single main track theme in this game is bad at all. Now it's sort of difficult to talk about the rest of this track's design without getting into the layout, so let's jump right into that. You start the race inside the airport itself, which I think is a good place to start considering if you're going on a flight, that's where you're going to start. Jumping out of the airport brings us to our first real obstacle of the level, which is a clever incorporation of the airport aesthetic, that being these crates on moving conveyors, which are meant to represent the luggage getting loaded onto the plane. If you run into these boxes, an item can even be spat out, which is another neat little touch. You may even get lucky and have that item be a mushroom to help you get a speed boost, but you have to be careful as hitting these crates can cause you to slow down and lose a bit of control over your cart. From there, you have to make your way under the first plane of the track, the tires acting as walls that you need to go around. I like how cramped this area is, especially right at the start, giving a good place to get killed by items or even just being pushed around by other players. Afterwards, you're met with a jump into a small little turn before bringing you to a split path. You have the option of actually going inside of the plane, or you can go underneath it where you have to avoid some more tires. I always prefer going in the plane, it just feels much nicer to do, but I like that the bottom route is here for any poor soul who gets hit by an item just as they're going for the jump. Speaking of which, right after we get a long runway meant to represent those that planes go on before they take off. This also includes our first real shortcut of the track, being the small ramp off in the grass that lets us cut this corner a bit. It being made out of grass does make it a bit trickier than if it was a normal ramp, but there's not too much to note about this. The runway is a prime place for items to be thrown around, especially red shells as they try to take down people after touching the glider ramp. Oh yeah, this is also the perfect place to put this, taking off right on the actual part where planes would take off. Then there's this random turn floating in the sky, which is the only part of the whole track that I'm just kind of on. It just feels like sort of filler to help bring the player back around in a circle and to throw in anti-gravity, since that was of course the main feature of Mario Kart 8. Luckily though, the track does end on a pretty high note, giving us another glider ramp which lets us actually fly past some planes before making our way back into the airport to finish the lap. Before we do that though, we have one more shortcut, though this is one I like a lot more. Just like the conveyor belt of crates we saw before, there's another conveyor with crates inside of the airport, though this time it only cuts off a small corner of the track. You could jump through it in order to cut the corner, though there's always the risk of a box getting in your way, or it could even help you if it drops a mushroom. I always like shortcuts that don't require an item. They go to make racing around the track a lot more interesting, as you always have to weigh your options as if you should go for the risk or not. This isn't the most risky shortcut since you won't be falling off the track if you mess up, but it's just a nice little extra bit of flavor. So overall, this track is fantastic. It's got a great aesthetic that works into the gameplay perfectly. The shortcuts are both also pretty decent. They aren't the most memorable in Mario Kart 8's massive selection of shortcuts, but they're still pretty solid. The only thing really holding this back from being perfect to me is the strip of land in the sky feeling a bit too much like filler. It was necessary of course, so it doesn't bother me too much. Overall, I think this is a strong A tier for the level by level tier list. Definitely a really good start to the Star Cup. Let's hope the second track can keep up this pace. Dolphin Shoals is a bit of an interesting course for me to talk about because for the longest time, I was really not that big of a fan of this one. I still think it's overall on the lower end of tracks in the game, but my opinion of it has gone up over time. Starting off with my reason for not being a fan of this course, it's an underwater level. Now normally the reason I find underwater levels to not be as good as ground levels is because of the gameplay, however that's not really the case here. Yeah, being underwater does change the physics a bit, and we'll talk more about that later, but it doesn't feel that much different from driving on land. No, the reason I find this being an underwater level to be a detriment is because of the aesthetic. This is just about the most generic a water track can get. They certainly try to make it more unique, namely using some more underused water enemies like the titular dolphins and the unagi eel, but other than that, this is pretty much exactly what you would expect from a water track. Now yeah, being generic isn't necessarily a bad thing. Mario Circuit GBA is one of my favorite tracks and it's pretty much the most basic looking track in the game, but a basic aesthetic certainly doesn't help. What does help this track aesthetically though is the song. This is one of the most popular pieces in the soundtrack and for good reason. It's an absolute banger. It's even utilizing the track itself extremely well, but to cover why, I think it's time we look at the layout. You start this course already in the water, drowning all the racers as Lakitu counts down the race. I do like starting in the water, but we'll get to why later. After the first turn, we get our first and only real integration of the dolphins in the entire course. There are a few ramps that if you jump off of them, you'll be able to leave the water for a brief moment, which is meant to replicate dolphins jumping out of the water, especially since the dolphins jump alongside you. After another turn, we get a really solid integration of the unique water physics. In water, carts will fall slower, so this segment uses that feature to have a bit of a long drive without a road using some pipes pushing out air. You'll be able to trick off these pipes for a speed boost, and there are several paths you can take. I usually just go straight across, but you can also go to the right with a speed panel, or you can go to the left if you're insane. Seriously, I don't think there's any benefit going this route. Now on the one hand, this is a really solid use of the water's low gravity. The only tracks I think use these physics better are the F-Zero tracks. On the other hand though, I hate this section because if you get hit here, which happens to me every single time I play on this course, it takes forever to recover as you slowly fall down into the abyss. Well, the use is still decently creative, so I won't hold it against this track. I just personally really hate this. The next segment though is really good, where you can ride on the back of the unagi eel. On his back there are a ton of coins, and you can even rapidly trick off his fin, which is a lot of fun to do. This is a fantastic use of the enemy, though it does kind of make me sad that this wasn't a track based on Jolly Roger Bay. I mean, how cool would it have been to have the unagi eel along with the sunken ship in the cave with treasure chests? They should really base more tracks on actual Mario locations. After the unagi eel though, we have one of the absolute best parts of the track that brings us right back around to the music. See, there are actually two versions of this song, an underwater version which you've been hearing all the way up until this point, but then once you break out of the water onto this anti-gravity section, the full version of the song finally comes in blasting, which just leads to such an amazing freeing feeling that really isn't matched on any other track. That's why I said I like that we started in the water, so that reveal of the full song would be much better as the lap is wrapping up. There's nothing really special gameplay wise here, it's your pretty standard anti-gravity section, but the music really makes this one of the best portions of the track. The lap then ends with a glider ramp bringing you back into the water, with the only real shortcut of the track being the small corner cut requiring a mushroom. It's pretty basic in shortcut terms, but that doesn't mean it's bad. The rock here also does a nice job of separating the shortcut from the main path, and you can even do this without a mushroom using the glider in 200cc, though it is kind of difficult. So overall, while I definitely think this track has a few downsides with a pretty basic theme and a somewhat annoying pipe section, this has more than enough good to make up for all of that. The unagi eel is one of the most creative uses for an enemy in the game, and the music really helps make this track better than it would be. Originally, I was going to put this in C tier, but ignoring my bias of always seeming to get unlucky on this track, I do think this deserves to be a B tier. Well, that was the low point of this entire cup, and it's only in B tier. I think you all may be starting to see why this is the best cup in the game, but if you still don't believe me, these last two tracks are really what put this cup above and beyond. Electrodrome is one of the most iconic tracks from Mario Kart 8, and that's for very good reason. First off, this is somehow the first ever Mario Kart track to have its title consist of only one word. That's not really important to the track's design or aesthetic, but hey, it's a fun little fact. Speaking of that aesthetic though, wow, this one is fantastic. This takes place in a massive disco with several screens of people of the Mushroom Kingdom having a party. You can even see some of them dancing near the beginning and end of the track. The purple color of this course goes super well with the party vibe, and it just makes this track extra exciting. Even the piranha plants on this track bop along to the music too. To match the disco theme, several speakers fill the entire course alongside the main centerpiece of the track, the giant disco ball which you ride around on several different anti-gravity segments. But of course, what really brings this aesthetic together is the song. This song is... Wait. I know this song. This is... No, it can't be.
Cause guess who's back? Cool Bowser.
Yeah, it always comes back to you.
Getting ready for a party right now.
So yeah, this song is fantastic, even better than Dolphin Shoals to me. It just fits the party aesthetic so perfectly. This track easily has the most unique and personality-filled aesthetic so far, but can my praises continue on with the track's actual design? Well, right out of the gate you get to fly off a glider ramp, which just adds a nice little bit of flair to the start of the track. Upon landing, you have to ride up a turn that also acts as a bit of a staircase before getting into one of my favorite portions of the whole level. The anti-gravity segment is really neat as a trail is created behind everyone as they drive along it, which goes really well with the colorful party aesthetic. After that, we reach a split in the path where we can either go to the green side or the pink side. What I really like about these is that they feel the exact same length, so that way I always mix up whichever one I go for. Both sections stick to being an anti-gravity, but since they're split off, they're also both really skinny, which can lead to players falling off or hitting the walls much more easily. These tracks both cross over each other several times while going around the disco ball, which is just a great example of Mario Kart 8 using its anti-gravity feature to create some really creative track layouts. At the end of the two colored paths, we reach another staircase of sorts, but this one is special as each step you land on is actually a panel that will make a small noise when you hit it, once again just adding a little bit more extra flair. Both paths finally come back together with a glider ramp to send them back to the starting area. Upon landing, you have to go up a much larger staircase than the others you've had so far to enter the last turn. It's pretty wide, so you have the option of going far away from the off-road to play it safe and lose a bit of time, or you could take the turn tighter and risk getting hit by the headbanging piranha plants. This also gives us the only real shortcut on the track, being a simple cut through this off-road. Since this turn is so big, cutting through here can definitely save a good bit of time, you just have to be careful to not bonk in any of the pipes. With that, the course finally comes to an end, and wow, what a fantastic track. Everything about it just has so much personality, and there are very few Mario Kart tracks that can compete with it in terms of aesthetic. The track itself playing into the colorful party with the trails following behind you or the tiles making noises as you land on them make this easily one of the most iconic tracks in the entire series. I think that it will be pretty uncontroversial to say this is an S tier track. Pretty much everyone I know loves this track. It does a fantastic job with its theme, but we still have one more track to go. It's gonna be pretty hard to top this, but let's jump right in to Mount Wario. Well, it seems like we've got ourselves another banger of a track. Mount Wario takes place on a snow-covered mountain, which has been done before in the Mario Kart series, but none have been able to quite do it like Mount Wario. One main reason for that is this track's unique property of not being split into 3 laps, but rather 3 sections. Very few courses in the Mario Kart series have gotten this distinction, which automatically makes this stand out above the rest. Mount Wario, though, uses this 3-section gimmick better than I think any other track in the series. It's sort of hard to talk about this track aesthetically without talking about the layout, so why don't we just take this section by section. We start the race at the top of a mountain in a helicopter, and right away we see one of the main reasons I think this track was perfect to be split into sections. Since the developers no longer have to worry about the track looping back on itself, we were able to get a track that purely focuses on going down the mountain. That makes this track feel like an adventure, more than any other in the game. That is also sold by each section not only being very distinct from each other, but each section also having unique portions inside of it. But anyways, back to the start of the track, once the race finally begins, we're able to jump out of the helicopter onto the mountain itself. Just like Dolphin Shoals though, this integrates the music into the track perfectly. The beginning portion is always perfectly timed to start blasting the second you land on the mountain or while you're in the air, making the start of the race always feel super exciting. Oh yeah, we haven't talked about the music yet. The song here is another banger. I think I like Electrodrome's theme a little bit more, but this is still super good. This track does something very interesting with its music though, as it will actually change as you go down the track, molding the song to better fit that individual section. After landing on the mountain, we get a little bit of time to drive on some snow. The item boxes are also placed here, so if you get lucky enough, you may be able to get a mushroom and cut this turn by going into the small dip here. After this ramp though, we get into the main defining feature of this first section, the icy mountaintop. This will make the cars slightly more difficult to control, but that totally fits with this being the ending track of the cup. Right away on this first turn, you have a small split path. You can stay on the ground, which is a bit safer, or you can go on the ramp at the side and take the turn a bit tighter, with the risk of falling off being much higher. I always try going for the ramp, though having a safe option is always nice as well. That's not the end of the split paths though, as there's another one right after it. Staying grounded this time is both not only faster, but also safer, so why would you take the other path? Well, that one gives you access to 4 coins, which can help your cart get a bit of extra speed for the rest of the race. Personally though, I never take that path. It's just a bit too risky for me with the boost panels, though I do like having the option. That leaves us with one more turn for the first section, and this also so happens to be my favorite part of this section as well. While you could take this pretty wide turn normally, there's actually a shortcut here. If you notice, there's a ramp over the big gap between the two sides of the turn, so if you take your drift super tight on this turn, you'll actually be able to skip it entirely. My favorite part about this is that you don't even need a mushroom, which are my favorite kinds of shortcuts. It can be very risky to to go for, as you can very easily fly off the track due to the slippery ice, making this one of my favorite shortcuts in the entire game. I always go for this whenever I play on this track. It's just far too fun to pass up, and landing it is super satisfying due to how risky it is. That brings us into section 2, what I would say is the most diverse of the 3. In fact, it's so diverse that this segment actually gets 2 songs instead of just 1 like the others. This section actually has us go inside of the mountain for an anti-gravity portion. The dark icy cave looks really cool. I love how they continue to use the icy roads for the inside. As this is an anti-gravity section, this has us right along the walls of the cave. However, falling off doesn't mean getting picked up by Lakitu, instead you just fall into a rushing river down at the bottom filled with small icebergs that you need to dodge. Whenever I play on this track, I always jump down to the water as soon as I can. I love how fast it feels to go down there with the water pushing you forward. If you decide to stay on the ice road though, then you'll get the option to either take a glider through the rest of the cave or just simply jump down into the water. Some of those icebergs I mentioned before even have boost panels on them to help keep the player flying for even longer. Eventually all of these paths converge back together to go through a small facility that Wario built on the mountain. What is this for exactly? Well, it's for Wario's very own dam, named Wario Dam. Very creative name. Okay, but after making your way through the small facility, we do see something actually really creative with how the anti-gravity is then used to ride along the side of the dam. There's even small water streams pouring down with boost panels that you can try to hit for a speed boost. This is probably my favorite use of anti-gravity on the track, it's just so neat to drive on here. If you think that section 2 is done though, you're sorely mistaken, because after we jump off the dam, we still have a small woods to go through. I really love this part, as despite being so small, they somehow managed to make it feel like there's a lot to explore here like in an actual forest. The way they do that is by having several split paths, and since you can only go through here once per race, it makes each path feel completely fresh. Right away you have the option of going either left or right. If you take the right path, then you get another split, one side giving you a ramp to boost on and the other keeping you on the ground but giving you a boost panel. The left also acts as another split path. The far left is pretty basic, but if you have a mushroom, then you'll be able to take this pretty well hidden glider ramp which will help you through the next segment. All of the paths recombine for one last intense bit for this section. Fallen trees line the ground which can be used to get a boost by hopping off of them, however it's a bit risky. The main highlight of this is of course the several trees on the road, which are very easy to run into, especially if you're going fast by getting a boost. Weaving in and out of the trees is really difficult and intense, as if you hit one, you're going to be losing a lot of time. One thing I really like about this though is that the developers included a sort of safe path off to the side. It's elevated above the trees a bit, however taking it is much slower than just cutting through the forest without bumping into any trees. I really like this good balance of risk and reward here. I always mix up going on the outside or through the trees depending on what place I am in the race. This wooded area had so much thought put into it. Despite lasting only for a few seconds, you really feel like you just went through a dense forest due to the several different paths and of course the crowded trees. But with that, we have finally made it to section 3. This has a more concrete theme throughout the whole thing rather than the several unique places that section 2 had. However, that's far from being a bad thing. This last section is meant to be a sort of skiing area, which is made clear by not only the flags on this portion, but also the Shy Guys scene going up ski lifts right above you. In fact, this is actually the first section of the track we can see people on, which makes sense as we are getting closer to the bottom of the mountain. Having them cheer you on, along with how the last version of the song plays out, makes this final section feel like a really strong and intense finale to the race. You can even hear the audience cheer whenever you make a jump off a ramp. This section gameplay-wise is definitely the most downhill of the 3, obviously fitting very well with the theme of skiing. It makes this feel very fast to go through, which I do really enjoy for the last lap. The turns here can be extremely difficult to make without hitting a wall, especially on 200cc. After a few turns, we get to a small section with a ton of bumps that you can trick off of. Trying to get as many tricks as you can while also making sure to get the item boxes is always a lot of fun. After one more turn, we reach the final anti-gravity section of the level, which is a super fast-paced ride downhill to lead into a massive jump. This is filled to the brim with boost panels, making this a very strong ending segment for the level. This big jump also includes its final glider ramp, which all represents the big jumps you can take while skiing. From there, there's just one more turn before the end. There's even some off-road here to maybe make a last-second pass with a mushroom. But with that, we finally end the lap at the bottom of the mountain, being surrounded by hundreds of people along with a ton of colorful hot air balloons, making this feel like a very victorious conclusion. Just based on how long I talked about this track, I think it's pretty obvious that it nailed its goal of feeling like a long adventure down a mountain. This is probably the single most ambitious track of the entire Mario Kart series, and it's perfect. Its aesthetic is fantastic, there are several shortcuts that can be taken with or without mushrooms, every single section is memorable and fun to race on in their own ways. Seriously, this is a perfect track. If it wasn't obvious already, this is my favorite track in the series, and I know I'm definitely not alone in thinking that. So with that said, this is easily an S tier on the level by level tier list, just barely being edged out by the Robo Brood for number 1 overall. If you dislike this track, I don't know what to tell you, because I think this will be a very hard track to top for any future game in the series. Really, the other tracks here range from being solid to amazing in their own way, but Mount Wario is the main reason the Star Cup is the best cup in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you all think Twisted Mansion is the best track in the game and are mad at me for daring to say Mount Wario is better? Let me know in the comments. Unrelated to this video, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this new wave of tracks. They already look much better visually than the ones in the first wave. Super happy to see Calamari Desert, Mushroom Gorge, and of course Waluigi Pinball make a return. But the thing I'm most excited for is the fact that there's actually a completely new track, which I didn't think they would actually be doing. Sure, they called Ninja Hideaway a new track, but that was in Tour. What makes this new track, Sky High Sundae, more interesting is that not only is this the first time we've ever seen it, but it also has anti-gravity, something none of the other Booster Course tracks have had. That makes me super excited to see what the future tracks have in store for us. Definitely be on the lookout for a video on this new wave sometime soon. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.